Welcome back to the Meaningful People podcast. So happy to have you here once again. And this week, oh boy, do we have a gift for you. We sat down with Mr. Yisroel Katz, who survived one of the worst atrocities ever known to humankind. And as Yaakov and I were talking before, he's probably one of the most resilient people we've ever met. This is somebody who went through concentration camps, and I'm not going to spoil other things that he's been through because you'll hear in this episode, but something that stood out to me about him, and you'll hear in this episode, is how happy he is. How happy he is. He has a family, he has grandkids, great-grandkids, and he's just so happy, and he went through literal hell.
Nachi and I discussed before, like what we're going to talk about. Nachi just said everything, so I have nothing else to add, but just sit back, relax, and enjoy this incredible person's story.
Unless you're driving, which, like, be attentive.
Unless you're in a Tesla that's self-driving.
If you're in a Tesla, then maybe you won it from the Chicago Chesed Fund.
Ooh, oh, nice. Enjoy. Welcome to the Meaningful People podcast, the podcast where we talk to people who are
meaningful.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, we have a very special episode with the one and only Mr. Katz. Thank you for traveling in all the way from Cedarhurst or Lawrence?
Yeah, well, you got to speak louder.
Oh, sure. I'll talk louder.
This way I understand what you're asking for.
I said you came. Thank you for coming all the way from Lawrence.
Yes. Well, we are in Lawrence right now.
Yeah.
So
it's not too far.
We're like long distance travelers.
Mr. Katz, can you tell us, I guess, where you grew up, where you were born?
Oh, yes, sure. Well, right now, when I was born, the area was in Czechoslovakia. Right today, it's Ukraine. You know, after the war, the Russian army liberated the area, which was originally Czechoslovakia, then it was under Hungarian occupation, and then the Russian army liberated the area. The place is called, in Hungarian, was Ungvar. I don't know if you guys heard. It's next to Munkacs. Either way, it's a town that I grew up in, and the home was sweet home, like all you guys. We didn't know any problems till the war years. The war years started in 1938. I was exactly 10 years old, and we went routine. Everything was no problem. You went to school, to cheder, to yeshiva. You did what everyone else did. And we grew up like friendship-wise. Was the boys from the class were your friends. You played ball in off time, and routinely you went to school. In the morning we went to secular school. The school was belonging to the Kehillah of the city, and it was secular only. The Limud Kodesh came in the afternoon, separate building, separate entity, but again, the Kehillah owned the school. And this was till about age 15. This is when trouble started. And by that time, of course, there was a lot of problems from the Hungarians. They were stiffing, they were knocking on all the Jewish stores. They were taking away the licenses of people who had stores with licenses and so on. And trouble started already. In 1941, which still was under Hungarian occupation, they took together people who were not local born or local citizen. They were Polish or foreign individuals, and they took them away to Poland, a place called Kamenicki Podolsk.
That's a mouthful.
They killed them that time.
Oh.
So that was 1941. And then from 41 to 45, with our hardship, there were certain times you couldn't go on a market. There were limited curfew time and so on. But in general, we had a happy life. Just like with the French. There were no, like go to pizza store or candy store. None of that stuff. We had none of it. However, sometimes you got a coin from your parents. You go get an ice cream cone. And the woman that had the ice cream store knew me, was friends with my mother. She piled up like a big pile. I couldn't believe it for the coin. And we were living normally. Everything was normal until the area started the German invasion, May the 19th of 1945. They made the ghetto, assembled all the Jews, stuck them in the ghetto, and eventually the ghetto was liquidated, Auschwitz bound. There were 4 transports from our ghetto, which was in the bricklayers factory, and it was a miserable period. There were no covers, we slept on the floor. There were no food, everything was limited. There was one water faucet for 8,000 people were in that ghetto. And there was another ghetto with 3,000, approximately close to 11,000 people. And the deportation took part somewhere in May, later part of May. There were, from our ghetto, 4 transports were taken out, 2,000 at a time. And we were taken with the 3rd transport, and after us there was one more transport from our ghetto. We arrived to Auschwitz. It was, for me, the second day, like by the schmoozers before dark. They took my mother to one side, my father, my brother, and myself for the past. They claim it was Mengele that was shown with the cane there, left, right, left. I don't know if it was him or another guy. It's irrelevant. But we were put away into a group who are, at this moment, bound for labor. Those people who went on our right, they were destined to the crematorium. And that was the next morning. I was talking to the old-timers that were there before us. Could I find out where my mother is? So the guy, I didn't know what he was talking about. He says, hey, you better go smell the burned flesh that she was put there. Forget it. That's where,
Nice.
And that was a bitter pill too. I didn't understand what the guy was saying. And my father, my brother, Pinchas, who his father is called after.
Your grandson is in the room that took you.
We were,
for the guests listening,
together in the outside Auschwitz, about 1.5 miles, assigned for labor. And we were in that camp. I was with my father in one barrack beginning, then they separated us. But we were in that workforce that belonged to IG Farben, a German conglomerate that owned the factory, and we were employees through the SS to these people, to the IG Farben people. And consequently, things kept on, they were routine. Every day, get up 5 o'clock, you line up, you get ready, you stand on the Appellplatz where they count you. They count and count. Each time we're counted 10 times in the morning. And then we marched out to the factory, and each one had their position or their gang. their commando number, and that was approximately till a certain period of time. Then I'll give you a little highlight what happened so you understand. My father at that time was 57 years old. He's a trimmed guy, tall guy, and he was like a master of, he could do anything. They took him out of the camp with others to build a sub-camp. One day I go to look at him. I look him up in this block. He's gone. The whole block was gone. They're gone. What can you say or do? There's no, say, inquiry what's happening or where. A month later, they brought him back. He was knocked down to like skin and bone. So he gives me his ration bread. He cannot eat. He cannot digest, he said. Pa, I said, you gotta eat. You're gonna die if you don't eat. Anyhow, we tried to rehabilitate him. For a while, he stayed there, and then suddenly disappeared with the rest of the group that was taken out to this particular sub-camp labor, and that was the end of it. Never saw him again. With that, I end my father's whereabouts, because I lost him. They took him and they gassed him and they burned him. This is the way the pattern was. The guys that were in the camp longer, they knew exactly how things did work. So that was it then. Then, routinely, we went out every day to work, and if you were not able to organize a little extra food, you had no chance to survive. In my case, I could tell you, I was a doer in a way. One of the guys, I never met him in my life. He was from Satmar. No, the mind is gone. Liebe Kaufman walks over to me before we had to line up in the morning. And he looks at my number on my jacket the same way we have it here. Put it on my jacket. The number, he says to me, what's your name? I says, my name is Yisroel Katz. Where are you from? Tell him from Ungar. He says, he's Liebe Kaufman for Satmar. I have an idea. Together we could do a crime that'll pay off. If they catch you, they string you. Things like that. So I said, what's the crime? We have to get ready before the bell rings up. We're getting up the ring up bell in the morning that you got to get started getting dressed. We already should be dressed and meet a certain place by the kitchen, and then we could have organized a bigger pot than the quart that we had, dip in and walk away. And we did this for weeks, and that gave us extra food. Now the question is, why did Liebe Kaufman pick me? I never saw the guy before. You know, his grandchildren looked me up because their grandfather already was a little bit senile, and I don't know how they discovered that he was in partnership with me. And they came to my house. They spent the first time 3 hours, and I had to give them details. The bottom line was that we survived because of that particular incident. That's after the Holocaust. Now, you want further the Holocaust, I could give you in January the 18th of 1945, when they liquidated the camp. The Russians were approaching. We didn't know anything about their activities in the front, but the Russians were approaching, so they took the camp, which we were 12,000 inmates. And would they march us first by foot, then by train, then by foot, then by train, then by foot, for over 2 weeks. The frost was bitter, ice cold, like you have in here. You don't have that kind of cold. It was cold in the pajamas, no clothing, no food, nothing. You keep on going. Anyhow, we wound up finally in a place called Gross Rosen. They ordered us out of the cattle cars, which we did, and then suddenly, about 2 hours later, tell you, go back to the cattle car. My brother Pinchas was powerhouse, come next to me. I was already down. He picked me up, pushed me up back into the open cattle car, and he crawled on. A day later, we come in, I don't know, into Czechoslovakia area. We were in the cattle cars, and there were people cross a bridge, and they were throwing in their sandwiches into the cattle car. We don't know who they were, but that's what happened. The next day, we arrived to a place, Sachsenhausen, which was around Berlin somewhere, and we stayed there maybe 2 nights. And my brother, we were soaking wet, and my brother took his shoes off, put it on his head, and another one of our own grabbed his shoes and disappeared. Right. We were at that time in a hangar, 3,000 people. That's all they could jam in it. He had lost his shoes. The next day, they line us up. They're taking us out of that Sachsenhausen. They want us to load onto cattle cars again, which we did. But the SS pulled my brother out, and put him aside. We lined up 5 in a row. He was in the middle, pulled him. We had to march on, never saw him again.
Right.
So you have to understand, I was left alone, my father and my brother, and all the people that I was with already, they grew like your own family, in misery. But that's what Then we stayed in this particular camp called Flossenburg. Flossenburg was a PW camp for Russian prisoners originally. And we were in there and we were treated by the Russian troops very badly. Called us all kinds of names. Zhid, you all named your name. And from there, we stayed there, no work, no food. The only thing you had, faucets of water. Others won't survive. There were piles of bones. We don't know what kind of bones, but we chewed the bone. And everybody got diarrhea. So one of my buddies that survived with me says, Yisroel, you know what? You gotta get coal and make coal dust and take it. Maybe it stopped diarrhea. That's what we did. We stayed there about 5 weeks. Then a death march again. I had 2 of these boys that helped me survive. It was Aaron Blum and Benzien Goldberger. These 2 boys dragged me. I couldn't walk anymore. Then Aaron's pants fell down. His hips are gone. Pants fell down. The SS killed him right on the spot. Aye. He was bending down. Benzien kept on telling me, you see through, you sit down, you're dead. I don't know how, but I recovered and I was able to walk with one guy's help. we were going, and this happened, the killing happened of Aaron Blum one day before liberation.
Oh.
So this was the end of the march, on march, off march. To sum it up, we got liberated in a place called Neumburg am Wald. Neumburg am Wald is outside Nuremberg somewhat, and there was a colored unit. They were a tank commando, 2 or 3 tanks. They were the ones that liberated us. We didn't know who they were because the star was on the tank, white. The Russians have a red star. We didn't know whether they were Russian or not. That's how we got liberated. But the most difficult part, after so many years, you're able to separate the incarceration with freedom. It's called in Hebrew, Me'avis Lecheres. You got that point?
Mm-hmm.
You say that every Shabbos, when you bench Shoidish, Me'avis Lecheres. So this is a big question, but there's no answer to it really, unless everybody does their own. It is difficult because you're in slavery and you try to determine where you really are. When you were liberated, you start to want to get back to normal life, to normality, and it's a difficult task because when you walk into a store, you walk out, you don't pay your bill. It's a crazy way. Not that you didn't want to, just didn't work that way. And this little things, but it took a while that we're back into normality by meaning going back to school, try to get involved in public affairs and families, so on. And, I was lucky, more so than most people, that we were 10 siblings, and only one sibling we lost in the war.
Wow.
That's Brother Pinchas, who was married and he had 2 little girls. They all vanished. That's right now. Well, I could give you a lot more on that because there is incident. I was there with, like in camp, with Elie Wiesel, Primo Levi, Menashe Klein, and other dignitaries for personalities in the world. This, by the way, this Primo Levi took his life. He was an engineer, and he was stating, unless you steal, unless you get extra food, you cannot survive longer than a certain amount. He gave the time element. That was it. Now, going back to the childhood era. Childhood era was, as I told you, sweet, like you guys have it here, but in a very minute, very light way. We had no luxuries of any kind. In my family, we had everything. I cannot tell you how rich we were, but I had everything. There was a lot of poverty. There were people who came to school without shoes. Could you believe that? There were children coming to school without breakfast. We had a teacher that was, Mr. Tischler, was a tzaddik. I don't know how he organized 4 pounders, bread like that. A 2 pounder over there was 4 pounds. He cut it in half, cut pieces like this. He had a canister of milk. If you wanted a piece of bread, no way. He only gave it out to those who didn't eat.
Mm.
That's how life went on. Come around the winter time, he collected, I don't know how, 2, 3 people who had no shoes. He went to the shoe store, got a deal. He sent people pick it up, and he gave it to the kids. That's the way we lived.
After the war, was it an easy process for you to find the rest of your siblings? Did you know whether they were alive or not?
That's a very good question, and it's very real, and it's such a live one. I could picture exactly what you asked now. I could picture it like in a video. You know, my friend Ben was a very smart boy. He learned well. We used to go to cheder together. He learned well. And he said like this, Yisroel, we got to go back home. So when we were liberated, we knocked on a door, and there was a doctor, a veterinarian, doctor's house. And we knocked on the door that we want a room. We were authority, understand? We had power. And the guy said, yes, come in. Received us very nicely, gave us the living room. And they brought a couple of beds, and we're going to sleep there. We slept there by 4 or 5 nights. So the American headquarters requested the house, so we had to get out. So Ben tells me, no tachlis here, let's try to go back homeward. Maybe we'll find somebody alive. The way we thought, there's nobody left. The way we saw our being, the way they massacred our people, there's nobody. So we keep on rolling. There were no good transportation. Suddenly there's a bus. Any people who were born in Czechoslovakia could board the bus and we'll go back home. So Ben-Zion and I boarded the bus. Before we entered Czechoslovakia, they stopped us by the border. They took us into a school, laid out like a kingdom, brand fresh linen with Katz, kolachkas like brittle challah, twisted challah, mooncake. These people didn't know what to do for us. We stayed one night, then we kept on going back towards home. We came to Prague. They wouldn't let us go unless we go medical examination. We're going to a medical facility, and the doctor checks us out. Doctor said, what's the matter? The stomach is blown up. I said to him that we had a whole bread. We ate it there. Anyhow, checked us out and let us go. There were no trains for about 3 or 4 miles. We walked, we hopped a train. Trains were loaded like, unbelievable. Finally, your question. We arrived to Budapest, and there was the Joint Distribution Committee who helped out the refugees, the comeback people. On the stairwell, going up, there's a guy taps me from the back. He says to me, little cats, like small cats, you're lucky. Your brother Moshe is alive. My brother, where is he? I don't know, but I saw him. Guess what? I couldn't think of anything other. We had my mother's sister originally lived in Budapest. They migrated to America in 1939 by the World's Fair. But I remember the number, they used to write us letters. I remember this street. My Zion and I, we go there. One of my cousins lived in the apartment. Woman, all dressed up. We said, she's asking us, did you see my kid brother? We're not here to tell you Well, we saw nobody. We are looking for our family. Finally, she gave us the address of my oldest sister, who was engaged in Budapest. Went to see her. Hannah, what's up? Who else is around? So she said, Brother Moish, has an apartment in Oradea Mare. It's grocery down in Yiddish. He visits territory. That's where, who is there? Socher, Louis, Terry, Matza. Wow! I couldn't believe it. I had siblings. There was, I think, 7 of them. Without me, I was 8. That's correct. 7. Oh, I said, when I saw them, it's unbelievable. Because we thought there's no one alive. So guess what? Brother Moish, right after I came settling, he took me to shul on Shabbos. I came in, Betzian and I, how I got there through other people. We got to their house, their apartment, and Betzian knocks on the door on the first floor. So my brother Moish comes out. He's asking about me, who is this guy? Betzian says, your kid brother. Wow. I looked different that time. Anyhow, he took us into the house and he gave us, Shabbos morning it was. How we got there is just a spiel. It's irrelevant. We got there. It was kakos, cake, milk, coffee, and kakovsky. And after that, took us to shul. I said to Brother Moish, what do I need this shul for? What do you guys go to shul for? It's insane to go to shul for. Anyhow, we came there, the davening stopped. I was one of the first kids who came out of the camps in that time. Anyhow, did you see this one? Did you see that one? Everybody wanted to know if I saw one of their members of the family. Then a week later, I was all dressed up like a human being. Clothes. Brother Moish says, let's go on business. We got to make a living. So originally, we were back in the old country. We had a brush factory and a broom factory. So Brother Moish already bought Bristol that we took along to Budapest. We used to do business before to a certain family. We went and did business. That's how we made our first dollar. I was back into Romania, not too long, a couple of weeks maybe, and then I had one of my brothers who escaped the war in 1938 to Switzerland. He's the one that we had contacted. My family contacted them, and thank you. And guess what? He is the one that arranged for us to come towards France. And I was the first among the family to go to Prague Pilsen, then take a army train that went towards France. I arrived in France in July of 1945. So my brother had an apartment there, and that's how we all met in France, little while, one at a time. So that's how we survived, and that's how we made 9 out of 10, which my brother Moish wrote a book, 9 out of 10.
Sure.
And this was approximately That's how I met the family. Of course, I could give you hours of how, what, where, and when, but I just gave you the highlights.
We'll be right back to this episode, but first, a few words about our sponsor, AMR Pharmacy. There's so much going on in life. There's so many chaotic situations. It could be the economic situation. It could be the health situation.
The Delta variant is a thing.
Life is just crazy.
Unpredictable.
And there's one thing in your life, well, there's multiple things, but this one specific thing that you can have control over to have stable, to have consistent, reliable, and that's the pharmacy that you choose to be in your corner. Pharmacy is more than just a pharmacy. It's part of your family. It takes care of you when you need necessities such as medicines, right? Those things are important. You don't want to, put that in anyone's hands. You want to put that in the hands of the people you trust. And we trust the people from AMR Pharmacy, and that's why we're here to tell you to give them a call today.
So you can give them a call at 848-222-1110 or go on their website, amrpharmrx.com, and you could get that needed stability in your life, because you know that when they take care of you, they take care of you. That sounds silly, but it's true. And enjoy the rest of the episode.
Do you now sometimes still think about, now you perhaps could have luxuries in your life. You live in America, you're safe. Do you sometimes think back to the life that you were living?
Let me give you a little bit of that so you'll understand. For my mind, there's a very complicated, not confused, but very complicated two personalities in a way. What is the rebirth of a person? How do you make it? Understand that I was 18 years old when I came to America. I had one Rebbe, the Wiener Rebbe, Rabbi Leibowitz, who was my mother's sister's son. This Rabbi Leibowitz was a Shomer Emes, a tzaddik. So I would have a time, I was saying, Rebbe, how could it be that Hashem allowed to happen to our people exclusively, to my father, to my mother, to my brother? You knew them all. So, he took me for a walk. And guess what? He explained to me, you have to learn how to stop the past and start from scratch, which I did. And that was my luck. I adopted this country, and I said to most people, what do you think? People ask me how old I was. I was born in 1947. That's when I landed here. And you know what? I went to Torah for a couple years, and I was matzliach in the sense that I was able to integrate among the normal people. But they went to play basketball, we went to play soccer with other European boys, and the friendship still on for, 45, figure out, it's over 70 years.
Wow.
So you put it all behind you. You just move forward.
I have news for you. Not only put it behind me, let me tell you, so you could understand how life does happen. In 1953, I was drafted. That's a whole story, which is not interesting, but I was drafted in the U.S. Army. Even being a survivor, they weren't supposed to, but they classified me 1A. So I had to go for a medical exam, and I lost 30 pounds prior to go for that particular date. Anyhow, a friend of mine, was Leslie Gross. He's still around. His father begged me, let's go to the square Rebbe. Maybe the Rebbe could do something. All right. Oh, go to Rebbe. And okay, we'll go to Rebbe. Rebbe looks at my friend, to Leslie. No, you got no problem. You be out. They wouldn't take you. I came in front of the Rebbe. Nothing to do. They take you. Hey, the Rebbe said, they take me. What can I do? So I was drafted and I joined the Army. I was in the U.S. Army 2 years. I was trained as a combat medic with first basic training, weaponry, and then anatomy and physiology for 8 weeks. I knew how to give, take, suck, you name it. We were trained for a combat medic. So they would try to get me out many different ways. How I got there is a story by itself. But the bottom line was that I was serving in the States 11 months and overseas the rest of the time, about 12 or 13 months. And guess what?
We are overseas.
Overseas.
Where?
In Nuremberg.
You went back?
They shipped me back. I didn't know. Hey,
That's not okay.
today, in Nuremberg.
You weren't scared to go back?
I was, 25 years old.
Yeah, but it was a traumatizing experience when you're younger, and now they're
Well,
shipping you back.
Listen to me, once they draft you, they got control over you.
You have no choice.
There's nothing.
Right, okay.
Exactly. If you choose
You couldn't explain to someone that you're a Holocaust survivor and
doesn't matter.
kidding me?
This business I was playing, I went to the company commander already in Germany. His name was Captain Heinz, like the baked bean Heinz.
Like ketchup?
Captain.
Catch up.
Heinz ketchup.
people. But he, by the way, he was a redhead.
Oh!
That's why I made ketchup.
Sir, look, I'm a survivor. I was in this area. I was liberated not far from here. How about getting a transfer to France? He promised he'll try, but it never happened.
Classic redhead.
We had there, in Nuremberg, we had there a Jewish chaplain. He was a major. He flew in from Norway, chicken. For Pesach, we made a Seder for 700 Jewish personnel from all over Europe in a high school.
Wow.
Kosher, the place was unbelievable.
I give you a lot of credit because, I mean, chas v'shalom, to me be in that situation that you were in, but if I had survived the Holocaust, to then be sent to serve for the United States Army,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what you think of the matter, but people I think who were, prisoners during the Holocaust were not so fond of America for not stepping in sooner. And there you are serving.
Some people got out, some people didn't. But the big item was, I must tell you, that the first 3 months while I was in Germany, I had nothing but eating my heart out.
Mm.
When I failed to get a transfer, I settled in. And you know what? I never went back to the place that I was liberated. And I remembered where I was and what house I was staying. But the big item that I went through some tough times, but the beautiful part is that when you come out in my situation, the way I do like this, you see, right now, see, that's how you do. I had a stroke in 2009.
Oh, wow.
This is something all my brothers say, you of all people, physically I was like a rock. I played ball that I was durable, you understand?
Mm-hmm.
I was always top notch, and I was good at what I did. I used to play volleyball. I was good. Table tennis. I was good at these things. But you know what? I figured it out a long time ago when I had the stroke. And I said, Rabbeinu Shalom, one thing I want, and I demanded, give me the strength to be able to put on tefillin myself. Let me tell you, when I was in the hospital, in the rehab center, I had there a woman nurse. She was very kind to me. She says, I could help you. My husband is Jewish. I got a son, Asher. I know all about this stuff. I'll help you. Guess what? She did help me. And you know what? When I was able to put it on, I had the Rabbi Pollack, who was at the Rusk Institute to the rabbi for the whole hospital. I knew him one day when I landed in America. He looks at me, wow, let me help you. I said, thank you. I'm helping myself. I'm a giant now. Once I was able to do it, I said, I'm on the derech. I'll be back. And you know what? I went to rehab in New Jersey. One of my sons was running that show. I spent 8 weeks in the rehab, and I was strong. Like nothing would have happened. But before then, I had cancer.
Aye.
I had an operation a year before, colon cancer.
Oh.
I survived that. And then, you know, when you have betochen and you have a minute, you mix the two together and you cut a roadway and you sail like a pilot, non-stop. Then the bottom line, what I could close with, is saying like this, that Hashem was good to me, is good to me, He loves me, I love Him, and there's a partnership. Like, you know, if I measure the tough ones and the good ones, I'm way ahead of the game. You know, folks could never be brought back. Unfortunately, many times it hurts to recap the past, but then immediately you have to switch over to see, like somebody asked me the question, would you have ever believed in your lifetime that you could raise a family, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren? Well, how could I answer?
Wow.
How could I answer? Where is a word that I could say?
Thank you, Hashem.
Let me ask you.
You know, the big thing, you know, I tied in to the Daf Yomi many, many years ago. And, you know, at the Siyam HaShas, they interviewed me, and they wanted to have background, like, you know, it was a long, long interview. And finally, I didn't know that they were going to put me on. Yeah, they put me on there, and I said like this, Rabbeinu Shalom, am I real? Hey, I look. I said, full pack at the stadium in New Jersey where the Giants play.
Yeah.
I said, Rabbeinu, I couldn't believe it that I lived to see such a achdus, such a tumultuous welcome to our people. Where can you ask for more?
Wow. I always wanted to ask Holocaust survivors this. Obviously, you went through a Gehenna that, you know, we can't even really fully understand. But at the same time, unfortunately, what we're seeing now is a rise in anti-Semitism.
And what?
We're seeing a rise in anti-Semitism.
Let me tell you, my whole viewpoint, I'll have to refer to some guy when Rabbi Shlomo Freifeld came to this neighborhood. You know, this man had a special way with people. There were homeless young boys. When I say homeless, they kicked out from their house. Whatever, father was too Hasidic, something happened there. And he's the one that put his arm around, gave him a few words. They glued to him. And they started in the Aguda. In the old building, we had an old building. It was a mansion. And the mansion had to be fixed up. When the beginning, my brother Moish and Mr. Schoenfeld, Pesach Schoenfeld, the two of them got together. They wanted to have the Aguda. So they got the Aguda, and then Rabbi Freifeld needed a place to start. So he came, he wants to start, if it's okay with you. Upstairs, the boys slept, a mattress just on the floor. As I told you, they were homeless. There was a kitchen, and the boys used it. They didn't keep it so clean. Anyhow, one of the guys was saying, Yisroel, you let those boys, look what's up. I said, what's your problem? I'll have it cleaned up. I had one of my workers at that time. I said to my guy, can you clean up the place? No, clean it up. It was spotless. So then I confronted the guy. Here, it's nice and clean, right? Why am I bringing this up to you? I was asking the same guy that told me that the place is dirty. I asked him the question, were you ever really hungry? So he asked me, what do I mean, really hungry? Oh, brother, what, you're really hungry when you didn't have food for 3 weeks? That means really hungry. He apologized for his past, saying, so it shows you that human beings are making errors, but in fact, they don't know the facts. Mm-hmm. And this is what I'm trying to tell you, that in my case, I'm grateful for people that surrounded me all through my being. I'm in the area here since 1955. I was involved, Baruch Hashem, in every deal. My brother Moshe was spearheading every single institution. Baruch Hashem is still around. He just made 97.
Wow.
You know, I had my brother, my oldest brother, we were 3 months ago. I lost brother in January. He was 2 weeks shy of 102.
Wow.
The other one I lost a couple of months ago. He was 94. Between my brother Mike, I was the 10th. We were 7 boys, 3 girls. And after the war, we made 7 boys and the 6 boys and 3 girls. That's it. Any questions you got, I could give you 1,000 answers to everything. The biggest item to come back to normality is a venture that everybody, children who hadn't gone through the Holocaust, all of the young people have to learn to come back and be in the right track. Because there's no country in the world, and I traveled through the world, many times over, to the Far East, to Europe. I was all over. And I want to tell you something. There is no way, nowhere in the world that young people could achieve as much as they can do. There's no limit of the height to whatever you want to become. You could go yeshiva, which is important. You had a limud the kodesh, limud the chol. You have today, to me, professional in order to survive, in order to make a living. And the way to do joy and happiness by earning it. How do you do that? By working hard and get there. And you got to be number one. Yeah, you tell me there are people who are better. They're not better. A number one, your style. The other one is his style. Everyone is number one. And you could all do it. Because they don't know men more than you can do. That's it. And you know what more? That I see parents, what they do for the children today. Like people ask you, how was it in the old country? Even if they had the money, they didn't spend it like here. Different world. People are used to luxury. Even they call it luxury. It's no longer luxury here. It's a steady item. It's beautiful. And I could tell you, when I watch and see the kids are kicking the ball, oh, I said, you're down my alley. I like it. I like sport. I always like. Even today, I'm 92 years old. I love to watch a ball game. If the pitching is good, I could watch more. If pitching is no good, I'm away from it.
Wow.
Anyhow, anything else you want to ask, I could give you.
I think
The numbers?
what you want to see his numbers. Could you show us the numbers on your arm?
Yeah, sure.
Do you?
Yeah. There's a number, I got to tell you. Somebody told me this week a funny story that I could match up. This is a story. This woman says that imagine I had four numbers, one after the other. So I said to her, I mentioned I had four. I had the very interesting thing to notice. My brother Moish, who's in the family siblings number 8, he was registered in Auschwitz, but he wasn't there. Now you have to learn this, that his body was hidden. He was hiding through the Holocaust. There was a young guy that used to work by us. His name was Harry Rosenberg, and Harry was in our home. So Harry said, forget your name, Harry Rosenberg. Your name is Moshe Katz. He's been deported with us. So Harry, became Moshe Katz. My father's number was 8279. Harry, 8280.
Wow.
Yours truly, 8281. Brother Pinchas, 8282. None of them came out. I'm the only one out of the four numbers that I mentioned. And the reason this woman was bragging that all the four made it, and my situation was the other way. None of them, I was the only one made. But Harry got killed. My father got killed. My brother got killed. And what I could tell you, this number here, it's a survivor number. And you know what? They had people ask, how did they do it? Mrs. like chain work. How did it affect the bakery? How does you bake 1,000 challahs? You got a few, what do you call the lines that the challah gets out there, right? And two guys strip it. And like 20 people was tattooing. There was people that our people did the tattooing.
Wow.
Do you remember when you got it? Do you remember the moment?
Of course I remember. How could you forget?
Well, Mr. Katz, I know there's, like you said, so much more we could discuss with you, but we're concluding this episode. Thank you so much for coming out here.
Oh, my pleasure.
And spending the time. And we're going to do this off camera, but Nachi and I would love a bracha from you.
What?
After we shut off the cameras and the mics, we would love a bracha.
Well, I would say this to you. A bracha that the Eibusher should give you the wisdom of staying clear of problems. How does one do that? With caution. And I would say to you both, Yivarechocho Adonai v'yishmerechu, Yor Adonai puraverechu v'chnechu, Yisroel Adonai puraverechu v'yisamlechu shalom. Shalom for you all and for all of us, in good health and prosperity and nachas from the family. And you could do, course, your own nachas by planting your people with love and care. And that's the game. Baby, nobody in the world, the knowledge that you grasp and you put into your kids, nobody could grab from you.
Amazing.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hope you guys enjoyed that episode. And if you want to get a bracha from Mr. Katz, he lives in the 5 towns. I don't even know his exact address. But
We're not going to give it out either.
But yeah, come around the 5 towns and ask
Just
for...
knock on a bunch of doors. We go down my Shai Hirsch.
He davens in that shul, and you could get a bracha. But something interesting about this episode, Mr. Katz was suggested by a good friend of ours, Menachem Katz.
Shout out Menachem Katz.
Yeah, thank you, Menachem, for taking Mr. Katz here. But it's interesting, while Nachi and I were doing these, there's obviously people that we think of that are great for the show, and we have so many suggestions, but there's so many people in your life that we know that they're meaningful people. Some are more famous than others, and it could be a relative, it could be a friend, it could be a mentor. So we want to hear those great people. Like, there's so many Holocaust survivors, right?
Yeah, and it's super important for us to keep sitting down with them and talking to them. Hopefully Mashiach comes before this, but there's soon going to come a day where there just won't be as many left. So if we have that opportunity right now to sit down with as many Holocaust survivors as possible and tell their story so that lives on for generations and generations and generations, that's the least we can do. So try to help us do that.
Yeah, and the parting message that I have this week is that, get brachas from not just Holocaust survivors, just all older people in your life that have so much wisdom, and they could give you a blessing.
Ciao.